What is up, guys? It's your boy back for another carnivore video. Not necessarily carnivore questions like you guys are used to, but just a nice carnivore compare and contrast to the standard American diet. Now I'm doing this for an assignment. I'm doing this assignment for English Composition 1, but digging deeper into the carnivore diet and also watching various podcasts with Dr. Sean Baker, Dr. Ken Berry, and even Dr. Chris Palmer, who advocates more on ketogenic diets. Both are restrictive, both have similarities of basically restricting your diet, getting away from high carbohydrates and sugar, and both relatively have the same results. And so I wrote a paper. Hopefully I get through this within the 10-minute time frame and you guys enjoy it. But without further ado, let's get into it basically, and you guys can tell me what you think down in the comments below, and if I'm doing any justice towards carnivore, in particular carnivore diet. I do mention ketogenic diet here towards the end of the paper, but of course all this information has testimonials, studies, and citations that I do point out. So it is an indisputable fact. Jesus Christ. It is an indisputable fact that all humans get hungry at some point in the day, whether studying after work or even when scrolling through our phones. No matter the scenario, the human being burns energy daily, and if they don't consume enough, they suffer from fatigue, insomnia, and even anxiety, which leads to depression. In America, there are increasingly more cases of mental illness than any other generation before Gen Z. In a study, we see that, quote unquote, just 45% of Gen Zers report that their mental health is very good or excellent, according to the American Psychological Association. All other groups fared better on the statistic, including millennials 56%, Gen Xers 51%, and boomers 70%. Annie E. Casey Foundation. Perhaps the "you are what you eat" mantra reflects the Pareto law of 80-20, or the 80-20 rule, and there needs to be more focus on what the modern human is consuming. Every living organism uses thermodynamics, calories in, calories out, for basic, but the types of matter Americans introduce to human biology might not output the sufficient amount of energy needed to properly function. The standard American diet, or the S.A.D, is by far the unhealthiest in the world because of its high sugar content, highly processed carbohydrates, and high saturated fat content. Keller. Whereas the carnivore diet consists of only unsaturated fatty meats and no carbohydrates such as bread, fruits, or vegetables. Although both carnivore and S.A.D diets may satiate calorie needs or caloric needs, the carnivore diet is the healthiest between the two because of the nutrient-dense improvement in cognitive function and its evolutionary significance. Because it is nutrient dense, improvement in cognitive function, and its evolutionary significance. As more studies will show, there is more correlation between the rise in anxious adolescents and adults due to their diet and less on their environment we call home. As science develops, the telling signs that the S.A.D provides all your nutrients for the day grows extensively unreliable. From epidemiology studies that were funded by the sugar industry in the late 1960s to new fad diets like veganism that takes on primarily a vegetable and fruit intake with no sourcing of meat. Beef contains several essential nutrients, including protein, iron, zinc, selenium, riboflavin, niacin, vitamin B6, vitamin B12, phosphorus, pantothenate, magnesium, and potassium. Beef Cattle Research Council. In contrast, the S.A.D uses government, food corporations, and medical industry funded studies that state Lucky Charms and chocolate covered almonds are more nutrient dense than beef. This is provided by the Food Compass, or Nutrient Profiling System, NPS for short, which has too many conflicts of interest after it was released in 2022 based on the National Library of Medicine. Vitamin C is necessary. So this is a quote. Vitamin C is necessary. Meat doesn't contain vitamin C, at least according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture. If there's a lot of glucose, sugar, in your system, vitamin C absorption is effectively inhibited. In a meat-only diet, glucose is effectively zero in the intestines. Thus, vitamin C becomes more bioavailable. Dr. Sean Baker. On a carnivore diet, the body starts to adapt back to homeostasis, back to a homeostatic way of functioning without the amount of glucose derived from a SAD, because you are not consuming any carbohydrates, which converts carbohydrates into sugar. Which converts carbohydrates into sugar. Needless to say, the NPS that was given to Americans contains a copious amount of sugar, trans fat, and carbohydrates that can turn into sugar, leading to pre-diabetic symptoms and other autoimmunities. Carnivore diets, mostly beef and water, romanticize hunting but ignore modern research, often funded by industry, promoting a survivalist view that benefits medicine. A simplistic comparison between the SAD and presumed ancestral dietary practices can be misleading. While some argue for the superiority of the SAD, the Inuit population, with its traditional high meat and fish intake, exemplifies the need for a nuanced understanding. The Inuit population of the Arctic exemplifies a traditional high meat diet, consuming primarily caribou, seal, fish, and birds. These communities boast an average life expectancy of 80 to 90 years. Ontario. Notably, the Inuit language traditionally lacked a word for cancer, though one has been recently introduced. Ontario, again, this suggests a potentially lower historical prevalence of the disease. However, the integration of modern practices have seen a shift in dietary habits, with elders traditional methods of consuming raw, cooked, and frozen dried meat being discouraged in favor of cooked options due to concerns about safety. This highlights the tension between traditional knowledge and modern health recommendations. Interestingly, the Maasai of East Africa also traditionally follows a meat-centric diet, heavily reliant on cattle for milk, blood, and meat. By Christensen. Despite this, their life expectancy sits around 42 to 50 years, with some reaching 60 years. University of Alabama at Birmingham. This discrepancy compared to the Inuit may be attributed to several factors. The Maasai environment, a harsh desert, necessitates frequent hunting, which can be unsuccessful. Additionally, limited water access and the presence of dental disease like syphilis likely contribute to their lower life expectancy. These may be a contributor to such a high mortality rate, but does not expel their diet and their young features, even being in their 40s. The Mongolians, historically characterized by a predation of meat-centric diets and predominantly hunter-gatherer lifestyle, share a narrative resonant with the intricate interplay between dietary habits and cognitive faculties. When examining the nexus between the microgut biome and cerebral functionality, it becomes evident that the capacity to exert dominion over populations, particularly through prolonged periods of conquest spanning over a century, necessitates not merely brawn, but also astuteness, intellect, and acumen. Blackmore. This assertion finds resonance in contemporary discourse with the upcoming practice of metabolic psychiatry, which scrutinizes the intricate dynamics between dietary energy consumption and mental well-being. Leggett. Emerging research underscores the potential cognitive benefits associated with elevated protein intake, indicating a positive correlation between heightened protein consumption and enhanced cognitive processes such as information processing. Baker. The SAD has been linked to concerning health trends, including obesity and declining cognitive function. Samuelson. While the exact cause remains unclear. Research suggests a connection between poor nutrition and cognitive decline. Samuelson, emerging evidence, particularly from Stanford Medicine, indicates the dietary changes like the ketogenic diet, higher fat, lower carb, can significantly improve symptoms of various disorders. Science Direct. Quote, the administration of ketogenic diet in the semi-controlled setting to patients with treatment refractory mental illness was feasible, well tolerated, and associated with significant and substantial improvements in depression and psychosis symptoms and multiple markers of metabolic health. Danan, end quote, Danan. The ketogenic diet coincides with the carnivore diet in two uniform ways: the elimination of carbohydrates and high-fat diet. Studies further show this approach may benefit conditions like bipolar disorder, anorexia, and schizophrenia. Dr. Sean Baker's work on the carnivore diet further highlights the potential of meat-centric diets in managing diseases such as diabetes, Crohn's disease, and Alzheimer's. Interestingly, pre-World War II American diets may have resembled this ketogenic approach, as evidenced by the pre-1972 food pyramid placing the meat in a prominent position. Springate, this historical emphasis on protective foods like meat, eggs, and vegetables align with earlier nutritional recommendations focused on preventing malnutrition. In conclusion, the escalating prevalence of mental health diseases, particularly among youth, necessitates exploring dietary influences. A growing body of research suggests a link between nutrition and mental well-being. The S.A.D stands in stark contrast to alternative approaches like the carnivore diet. While both diets can meet caloric needs, the carnivore diet's potential benefits lie in the nutrient density, potential cognitive improvements, and alignment with evolutionary dietary patterns. Emerging research on ketogenic and carnivore diets suggests promise in mitigating symptoms of mental illness and metabolic disorders. The shift towards processed foods reflect broader societal changes, but this departure from ancestral diet may have health consequences. As the understanding of dietary impact on health evolves, a return to a whole, nutrient-dense food warrants exploration as a potential pathway to improve mental and physical well-being. Further research into the therapeutic potential of alternative dietary approaches is crucial for a healthier future. So, could keep it down within the 10-minute mark, but there it is, the compare and contrast paper. Hopefully you learned a little bit, a thing or two. Go back, watch this, because all this is cited and there's pretty good indicators, but also watch some YouTube videos on the carnivore diet, ketogenic diet. I recommend, once again, Dr. Sean Baker, who is full-fledged carnivore, Dr. Ken Berry, which is full-fledged carnivore, and had a discussion with Dr. Saladino, who is a ketogenic doctor and advocates more for specific vegetables and fruits along with a higher protein intake. But once again, they both coincide as to getting rid of almost to all carbohydrates. So anyways, guys, that's basically it. That's the paper I wrote. So now it's just time to cite it, get a nice paper for citing it and turning it in, and then pray to God we get a fucking A. Anyways, guys, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you on the next one.